What happens when a daughter's greed turns her against her own mother after a massive $10 million lottery win? She thought stealing the winning ticket from her confused, elderly mother would be child's play. But she never expected that one tiny detail she overlooked would lead to her stunning and very public downfall. Before we dive into this roller coaster of a story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss the incredible tales of justice and revenge we share here every single day. The day my life decided to flip itself upside down and shake out its pockets started like any other Tuesday. It was gray, the kind of damp chill that gets into your bones, and I was doing my weekly grocery run. On the way out of the store, I saw a young woman sitting on the curb, trying to shield a baby from the wind while her toddler, who couldn't have been more than 3, was crying his little heart out. Something in my own heart just broke. I looked at the few things in my cart, mostly store-brand soup and bread, and then at them. Hell, I've been through tough times, but a mother's worry is a universal language. I walked over, knelt down, my knees creaking like a rusty gate, and offered her the $50 bill I had tucked away for emergencies. "Here," I said, pressing it into her hand. "Get these little ones something warm to eat and a roof for the night." The gratitude in her eyes was so overwhelming, it almost knocked me back. It felt like the most meaningful thing I'd done all year. Feeling a little lighter, I walked to the small convenience store next door to grab a chocolate bar, a small reward for myself. On a whim, as I was paying, I pointed to the lottery display. "Give me one of those super millions, will you, Charlie?" Charlie, the owner, slid a ticket across the counter with a wink. "This could be the one, Carol." I laughed, a dry, raspy sound. "Sure, Charlie, and maybe I'll grow wings and fly to Florida for the winter." Later that evening, the world was a quiet hum of the television and the ticking of my late husband's grandfather clock. I was about to toss the ticket into the recycling bin with the junk mail when I remembered Charlie's wink. What the hell, I thought, and pulled up the lottery numbers on my phone. The first number matched. Then the second. My breath hitched. Third, fourth, fifth. My hands started to shake, rattling the ceramic mug of tea on the end table. Then the final, Super Ball number, it matched. Everything went silent. The clock stopped ticking. The TV went mute. And the only thing I could hear was the frantic, thundering drumbeat of my own heart. $10 million. Me, Carol, who counts every penny and buys dented cans to save a dime. It didn't feel real. It was like I was watching a scene from a movie. Before I let myself have a heart attack, a lifetime of caution kicked in. I took a deep breath, walked on trembling legs to my desk, picked up my favorite fine point pen, the one I used for thank you cards, and in my neatest cursive, I signed my full name, Carol Ann Peterson, right on the back. Just a small, simple signature on a thin line, an old habit from an old life where you signed everything of value. That's when the phone rang, shrill and demanding, slicing through my days. It was my daughter, Amanda. Her timing was, as always, impeccable. "Mom, are you watching the news? Someone in our town won the lottery." Her voice was pitched an octave higher than usual, a clear signal of her excitement. Before I could even form a sentence, she was at my front door, her husband Rick hovering behind her like a shadow. "Oh my God, Mom, don't tell me," she breathed, her eyes scanning in a face, then darting to the ticket sitting on the table. The way she looked at that little piece of paper sent a cold sliver of unease down my spine. It wasn't a look of shared joy. It was a look of raw, naked hunger. "You won? You won?" She shrieked, grabbing the ticket before I could react. She and Rick were jumping up and down, screaming, already spending the money in their heads. A new car for him, a bigger house for them, a vacation I wasn't invited on. I just stood there, frozen, the initial shock of winning now being replaced by a chilling premonition. "We need to keep this safe, Mom, really safe," Amanda said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. She clutched the ticket to her chest like it was her own child. "People get robbed over things like this. You can't handle this alone. I'll put it in our safe at home. It's for the best." She was already moving toward the door, taking my future with her. And all I could do was watch, a sick feeling twisting in my gut, as my own daughter, my only child, walked out of my house with $10 million that wasn't hers. What happened next changed everything. You won't want to miss how this unfolded.
The grandfather clock chimed 2 in the morning before I finally drifted into a restless, nightmare-filled sleep. I dreamt that the lottery ticket was growing legs and running away from me, laughing in my daughter's voice. I woke up with a gasp, the sheets twisted around me like a shroud, and a bitter, coppery taste of dread in my mouth. For a few blissful seconds, I thought it was just a bad dream. Then the reality of the empty spot on my end table where the ticket used to be came crashing back down. I, Carol Ann Peterson, a woman who never balanced her checkbook without a calculator and a ruler, had let my daughter walk out the door with a piece of paper worth more than my entire life's work. What a fool. I gave it until 9 o'clock, a respectable hour. I didn't want to seem desperate, even though my insides were churning like a cement mixer. I dialed Amanda's number, rehearsing a casual, breezy tone. "Morning, sweetie," I chirped, hating how fake I sounded. I was thinking maybe we could all go down to the lottery office today, together, make a fun day of it. There was a pause on the other end, just long enough for me to hear Rick whispering something in the background. Amanda came back on the line, her voice dripping with the kind of strained patience one uses on a difficult child. "Oh, Mom, let's not be hasty. This isn't like redeeming a coupon for a free can of soup. Rick and I have been up all night researching. There are tax implications, legal structures. It's all very complicated. We've already got a call scheduled with a top financial planner. We're handling it." "We're handling it." The words slipped out colder than I intended. "Amanda, it's my ticket. I think I should be involved in handling it." "Of course you are, Mom, and we are so grateful. But you've been through so much. You're overwhelmed. Just relax, put your feet up, and let us take care of the boring stuff. We'll call you when everything's sorted." Before I could protest, she'd hung up. The dial tone buzzed in my ear like an angry hornet. Overwhelmed? I raised her on a widow's pension, navigated a world that wasn't always kind to a single mother, and buried the love of my life. I wasn't overwhelmed. I was being dismissed. That's when the anger started to bubble up, hot and cleansing, burning away the fog of panic. Fine. If they wouldn't come to me, I'd go to them. I threw on my coat, grabbed my car keys, and drove the 20 minutes to their ridiculously oversized house in the suburbs, the one with a mortgage I knew they were struggling to pay. I parked across the street, my heart hammering against my ribs. I just wanted to see the ticket, thus to hold it in my hand and know it was real and safe. As I walked up their perfectly manicured lawn, I heard their voices through the slightly open bay window of their living room. I froze. They weren't talking to a financial planner. They were talking to a lawyer. "So if she's, not in her right mind, can we establish power of attorney?" It was Rick's voice, low and urgent. "She's been acting a little confused lately, forgetting things. The shock of the money could have just pushed her over the edge." My blood ran cold. He was talking about me. Amanda's voice chimed in. "And what about the ticket itself? It's not signed, is it? Legally, it's a bearer instrument. Possession is everything, right?" A wave of dizziness washed over me so intense I had to grip the brick wall of their house to stay upright. "It's not signed?" But I had signed it. I saw my own hand, my own pen, my own name written on that line. In their greed and their frantic rush to claim my fortune as their own, they hadn't even bothered to turn the ticket over. They hadn't seen the one simple thing that stood between them and my $10 million. They were building their entire crooked fantasy on a foundation of pure, arrogant ignorance. I stood there, hidden by the bushes, a ghost at my own funeral, listening to my daughter and her husband plotting to steal my life and my sanity. I thought I understood their greed, but what they were planning next went beyond anything I could have imagined. Stick around, because the betrayal is just getting started. For a long moment, I just stood there, hidden by a scratchy juniper bush, the cold brick of the house seeping into my coat.
The world tilted on its axis. My own daughter, my son-in-law. It wasn't just greed. It was a cold, calculated coup. They were staging a takeover of my life, using my own good fortune as the weapon. The shock didn't last long. It crystallized, turning from a fragile, shivering thing into a diamond-hard knot of resolve in my chest. Oh, they thought I was a confused old lady, did they? They were about to find out just how wrong they were. I smoothed my hair, straightened my coat, and walked around the front of the house to the porch. I took one deep, steadying breath and rang the doorbell, putting on my best, pleasantly befuddled face. Amanda opened the door, her expression a perfect oil painting of fake concern. "Mom, what a surprise! Is everything okay? I told you we'd call." "I was just in the neighborhood," I said, breezing past her into the foyer like I owned the place. Which, in a way, I sort of did, considering my money had paid their down payment. Rick was standing in the living room, shoving his phone into his pocket and trying to look casual. He failed miserably. "I've been thinking," I began, keeping my voice light. "I'd like my ticket back, please. I've decided to handle the arrangements myself. I think I'll call my old friend Margaret's son, you know, the tax attorney." Amanda and Rick exchanged a look. It was a fleeting, barely there glance, but it contained volumes: panic, strategy, and a shared thread of conspiracy. "Mom, we've been over this," Amanda said, stepping in front of me, blocking my path to the living room. "It's too much for you to handle. You need to rest. Let us take the stress." "I don't feel stressed, dear. I feel invigorated," I said, meeting her gaze. "Now the ticket, please." This is when Rick decided to step in, adopting the tone of a stern but benevolent patriarch. He was 35, a man who sold mid-range imported sedans, and he was talking down to me like a king addressing a village idiot. "Carol, we're not giving you the ticket. It's for your own protection. You're clearly not yourself. In fact, I don't think you should be driving. Why don't you give me your keys and I'll take you home?" The sheer audacity of it was breathtaking. He was trying to trap me here, to take my keys, my independence, my last shred of power. The frail, weeping woman they expected me to be was gone. In her place stood someone they had never met. I let out a small, dry laugh. "My keys? Rick, you can't even manage your own car payments without a little help from my pension fund now and then. What makes you think you can manage me?" The color drained from his face. Amanda gasped. It was a low blow, but they'd drawn first blood. I turned my attention back to my daughter. "And you, Amanda, you were so worried about the ticket being safe? But in your rush, did you even bother to look at the back? Or were you too busy counting chickens that haven't even hatched?" Utter, dead silence. I had them. The look of dawning horror on Amanda's face was almost worth the $10 million right there. She knew she had made a mistake, a colossal one. "I'll be back for my ticket," I said, my voice now as cold and sharp as an icicle. "And I suggest you have it ready." I turned and walked toward the door, my back straight, my head held high. They were so stunned they didn't even move to stop me. I got into my 10-year-old Buick, a car that was paid for, and I drove away without a single look back. They didn't have a confused old woman on their hands anymore. They had a fight. They thought they had me trapped in their web of lies.
They had no idea I was about to make a phone call that would bring their entire world crashing down. What happens next is the beginning of their end.
Driving away from their house, I didn't feel shaky anymore. I felt a strange, icy calm settle over me. The kind of calm you feel in the eye of a hurricane. They thought they were in control. They thought they held all the cards. But they were amateurs, fueled by pure, sloppy greed. I, on the other hand, had a lifetime of experience in being underestimated. That was my home turf. My first stop wasn't a lawyer's office. That would come later. My first stop was a small diner 2 towns over, where no one knew my face. I ordered a black coffee, sat in a booth in the back, and pulled out my phone. My first call was to the State Lottery Commission. I didn't give my name. I just played the part I knew they expected. A slightly dithering, confused senior. "Hello, dear," I said to the patient woman who answered. "I have a silly question. If one were to misplace a winning ticket, what would happen?" The woman gave a practiced, sympathetic sigh. "Well, ma'am, unless it's signed, it's a bearer instrument. Whoever holds the ticket can claim the prize." My heart gave a little thump. Oh dear, but what if one had signed it? On the back, a very clear signature. The woman's tone changed instantly, becoming crisp and professional. If the ticket is signed, it is the legal property of the signatory. Anyone else attempting to cash it would be committing a felony. We'd have to involve the authorities immediately. "Is there something you need to report, ma'am?" No, thank you, dear. You've been a great help," I said, and hung up, a slow smile spreading across my face. It was just as I thought. They weren't holding a golden ticket. They were holding a stick of dynamite with a very short fuse. My next call was to my oldest friend, Margaret, a woman who had seen me through widowhood, raising a difficult child, and countless other small apocalypses. I told her everything. She didn't interrupt once. When I was finished, there was a moment of silence before she exploded. "That no-good 2-bit car salesman and your viper of a daughter? Carol, we are calling my son right now. We'll sue them into the next century." "Patience, Marg," I said, feeling the thrill of the hunt. "A lawsuit is messy and long. I have a more elegant solution in mind, but I'll need a good witness." That evening, I made the hardest phone call of my life. I rehearsed it a dozen times, dredging up every ounce of weakness I'd ever felt and putting it into my voice. I dialed Amanda. The moment she answered, I started to cry. It was a pathetic, sniffling sound. "Amanda?" I whimpered. "I'm so sorry. You were right. I'm not well. The shock, it's too much for me." I let my voice crack. "You and Rick, you were just trying to help, and I was horrible. Can you ever forgive your silly old mother?" I could almost hear the gears turning in her head, the suspicion warring with her triumphant greed. "Oh, Mom, it's okay," she said, her voice softening, but still cautious. "I just have one favor to ask," I sobbed. "Before you take care of everything, could I just see the ticket one last time? Just to hold it, for my peace of mind? We could meet tomorrow, just for a minute, at the bank downtown. I have to go there anyway to sort out some bills." The bait was laid. The bank was public, neutral. It would make them feel safe, and their belief in my weakness would be the hook. There was a long pause. I heard Rick's muffled voice. He was probably telling her it was a trap, but Amanda's greed was stronger than his paranoia. "Okay, Mom," she finally said, "we can do that. Tomorrow, at the Capital Trust Bank, noon." "Oh, thank you, sweetie. You're a good daughter." I hung up the phone and my tears dried instantly. My face was a mask of stone. The trap was set. The next day,
I was at the bank at 11:45. I wasn't alone. Margaret sat at a table nearby, pretending to read a newspaper, her eyes missing nothing. The bank manager, a man I'd known for 30 years, had already been briefed. He assured me his security staff was discreet, but ready. At precisely 12 o'clock, I saw them. Amanda and Rick strode in, looking smug, confident, and victorious. They scanned the lobby, saw me sitting alone at a small table, looking frail and small, and their smiles widened. In Amanda's hand was a crisp, white envelope, my envelope. They walked towards me, swaggering like a king and queen coming to collect their tribute, completely oblivious to the fact that they weren't walking into a bank. They were walking into an execution.
We are on the verge of the climax. What happens now will turn everything upside down. You simply cannot miss the resolution of this story. They sat down opposite me, the picture of magnanimity. Amanda slid the envelope across the polished table with a triumphant little smile, as if she were bestowing a great gift. "Here you go, Mom," she said, her voice oozing fake sympathy. "Just so you can have your peace of mind, then we'll put it away somewhere safe." "Thank you, dear," I said, my voice steady. I picked up the envelope. My hands didn't even tremble. I slid my finger under the flap and pulled out the ticket. For a moment, I just looked at it. The numbers, the colors, the flimsy piece of paper that had caused such a monstrous rift in my life. Then I looked up, first at Amanda, then at Rick. They were watching me, their eyes gleaming with avarice. I held up the ticket. "It's funny, isn't it?" I said conversationally, "how a little piece of paper can show you who people truly are." Rick snorted. "Don't get all philosophical, Carol. Are you done? We have an appointment." "Actually, so do I said, and with that I signaled over my shoulder. Mr. Henderson, the bank manager, immediately started walking towards us, holding a file. Two well-dressed but very large men who had been standing near the vault broke from their positions and began to drift casually in our direction. Amanda's eyes narrowed. "Mom, what is this?" "This," I said, my voice dropping the frail old lady act and taking on the cold, hard edge of command, "is me taking back my life." I turned to the bank manager. "Mr. Henderson, thank you for coming. This is the winning ticket I mentioned. I'm ready to start the official validation process." It happened fast. Rick lunged across the table, his face a mask of fury. "Give me that, you crazy old woman!" But he never got close. One of the large men stepped smoothly in his path, blocking him with an arm as solid as a steel beam. "I wouldn't do that, sir," the security guard said in a calm, quiet voice. "What is going on?" Amanda shrieked, her face turning a blotchy red. "That's our money. Tell them, Mom. Tell them you're confused." I stood up slowly, holding the ticket firmly in my hand. I turned it over and held it out for her to see, pointing to the delicate cursive signature on the back. My signature. "I'm not confused at all, Amanda," I said, my voice ringing with clarity in the suddenly silent bank lobby. "My name is Carol Ann Peterson. It's been on the back of this ticket since 5 minutes after I bought it. You were so busy plotting how to steal it, you never even thought to check." Margaret stood up from her table. "And I'm a witness to the fact that they admitted to holding her property against her will," she announced, her voice booming. "And I can confirm," he said, looking directly at Rick and Amanda, "that attempting to claim a signed lottery ticket belonging to another individual is a Class B felony. The State Lottery Commission's Security Division takes that very seriously." The fight drained out of them in an instant, replaced by a pasty, greenish terror. They looked at each other, the shared greed that had united them now curdling into shared panic. Amanda started crying, real ugly sobs this time. Rick just stared, his mouth hanging open, looking like the cheap corner-cutting hustler he really was. Security escorted them out, not in handcuffs, but with a firm formality that was somehow even more humiliating.
I didn't press charges. Seeing their world crumble around them in that bank lobby was enough. They had lost, and they knew it. A month later, life was different, but not in the ways Amanda and Rick had imagined. I didn't buy a mansion or a sports car. I paid off my mortgage, set up a trust for my own future, and I hired a very good lawyer. Then I did the one thing I'd wanted to do from the start. I hired a private investigator to find the young mother in the grocery store parking lot. It turned out her name was Sarah, and her life was even harder than I had imagined. Last week, I sat with her in the office of a financial advisor, a real one this time, and set up an anonymous trust fund for her 2 children. Enough for their college, enough for a down payment on a small house, enough so they would never have to know the kind of desperation that forces a mother to cry on a cold curb. I kept my house, my old Buick, and my quiet life. The money hadn't changed me. It had only revealed what was already there, in me and in everyone else. Some people, when you put them under pressure, turn to dust. Others, you find out, are made of diamonds.